Waratah submarines received a major boost with today's announcement. The formation of the so-called collaborative groups is a move to pull the state's industry and commerce in line behind this city's bid. It will give the bid added weight by using the expertise in various areas of people like financiers Jim Dominguez and Nicholas Whitlam. In all, 23 experts will form 3 groups in the areas of finance, industry and education and research. They'll help advise strategies to lure the successful European contractor to this state. The announcement was made in Newcastle by the Minister for Public Works, Laurie Brereton, who went over the proposed site with members of the task force as well as representatives of the media.
We've assembled 23 of the leading experts in our state to assist in guaranteeing that the Newcastle bid is unbeatable for submarine construction. And it's consistent with the New South Wales Government commitment to this as the greatest opportunity for industrial development in Australia for the next decade.
Mr Brereton took the chance to restate his government's stance that Newcastle is the most economic and logical place in Australia to build the submarines. He had no reservations about how important the contract will be to Newcastle if we get it.
There's no doubt that this is the most important contract in Australia for the next decade or more. It involves several hundred direct jobs, but it also, of course, involves a spin-off of some 3,000 jobs. And indeed, the program not only involves the construction of one submarine for at least each 18 months over the next 9 to 12 years, but a 25 years maintenance program after that. There won't be a better opportunity for Newcastle, for our state, than the winning of this submarine contract.
The addition to the reserve is a 717-hectare parcel of land on the western side of Fullerton Cove. The land was originally owned by BHP, but in July 1984, the company announced it would auction the land, possibly for subdivision as farmlands. An outcry by local environmentalists led the state government to step in and buy the land. The long-awaited announcement that the land will become part of the reserve means that almost 3,000 hectares of wetlands have been preserved. The Hunter Wetlands Trust, which runs the Shortland Wetlands Centre, is celebrating the announcement. President Brian Gilligan says it is important news.
It's great news. It's a real good news story, I guess, in many ways, because it started with a potential controversy and quite a bit of misunderstanding 2 years ago. And it's now ending like this very, very favourably. It's certainly a major addition and a very significant addition to the Kooragang Nature Reserve, and it's one that helps consolidate the major reservation of the Hunter Estuary's valuable wetlands. It's a beauty.
Michael Tooth says that, like small businessmen, farmers do not want government handouts. They want a change to economic policies. He says that big government and big taxes are the problem, and that farmers and small business owners must join forces to fight for changes.
I believe if we can weld this together, that governments will have to listen in the future, because they cannot deny 60% of the employment opportunities and 40% of the export earnings. And they cannot continue to destroy those two business groups by high taxation, high government charges, and a high inflation rate and high interest rates which destroy incentive and productive capacity.
Are we suffering the ills of big government?
Oh, very much so. We have a higher proportion of our GNP spent by governments than most other developed nations. And once you get over about 25%, you're in real trouble, and we're at the level of about 40%.
With the award yesterday of the $489 million Tangara project and favourable forecasts on Newcastle's role in the submarine project, the city is starting to take itself seriously again as a major industrial centre. Tourism Officer Horst Andrele said today that in light of this recent industrial bloom, it's important that Newcastle markets itself for what it really is.
We have the variety which no other town has, the variety of attractions, even industry attractions, combined with natural attractions.
The Newcastle Tourist Association, a body of 10 corporate and government members formed a month ago to foster tourism in the area, intend to highlight industry as a feature for visitors. Tours of local industry and signposted tourism drives incorporating the dockyards, the BHP and the coal industry are in the pipeline. The new Tourism Information Office, housed in a railway carriage on Queen's Wharf, is well on its way to restoration. Today, the exterior design of the carriage was displayed for the first time. This centre will operate 7 days a week, and plans are afoot to provide parking bays for tourist buses in the area. Next month, the Lower North Coast and Hunter Tourist Authority will begin filming a new commercial under the banner of The Hunter, Australia's fine wine and food capital. While that aspect of the region is certainly one of our most marketable draw points, the Newcastle Tourism Officer wants it known that that familiar banner is only half the story. Right.
Brian Lowton was able to see firsthand the progress of work on the new continuous bloomcaster, and he was also shown through the Pacific Colliery at Teralba, one of the company's most productive mines. Brian Lowton says BHP's Newcastle investments continue to prove a valuable part of the company's operations, despite some rationalisation in the steel industry.
Of course, it depends a great deal on the performance of the Newcastle investments and particularly the steelworks, but we're confident that the work that we have in train is going to yield constructive results, provided we get the support and continuing cooperation of all those involved.
Are you concerned there might be job losses at the Newcastle steelworks because of the introduction of the bloomcaster and other high technology?
We have to face the fact that there will be less jobs progressively. Now, we will manage the reduction in workforce as best we can, and I believe that we're doing well in that regard so far, and we're certainly talking to all the people concerned. But we have to look at the job security and the opportunities for those who remain in the industry.
The Lakes area is no more prone or immune to drugs than anywhere else in Australia, nor are its residents. They do stand out, however, in their determination to generate an understanding of why people become involved in drug taking and strategies to help the individual and the community cope and recover. The discussions this morning were coloured with frank revelations about why people they know take drugs, how they are affected by them, and by tomorrow afternoon, it's hoped the talk will be concentrating on action plans to reduce the lure of drugs to help people cope with stress and problems. The summit's chairman, Debbie Swan, typifies the enthusiasm and hopes of all those involved.
Well, I mean, we're the future generation, and something has to be done now before it's too late. And if we have our say and start doing things, then it's going to make it all the better for our children and the children of our children.
The Youth Drugs Summit has been organised by the New South Wales Police Community Relations Unit, the State Youth Coordinator of which is Marianne Freelish.
Young people are the ones that it's affecting most. So naturally they should be the ones that we talk to and listen to and take their lead, because what's the use of adults dictating all the time? We don't understand what the problems are. We've got our own problems that we're trying to deal with. Let's let the young people give us the ideas, then we can deal with them effectively, as long as they're also involved, because young people will listen to their peers and people their own age far more than they'll ever listen to anyone saying, don't do that. So let's all work together.
Great.
Big smiles and a few tears were the story of the night when the Belmont High School netball team stepped off a train from Sydney at Broadmeadow Railway Station. The girls faced tough competition throughout the championship, none tougher than fellow Newcastle team Kooragang High, who were last year's champions. Belmont defeated Kooragang 48 points to 41 in the semi-finals and went on to beat Condell Park High in the final 47 to 38. Against such fierce opposition, their championship's victory is all the sweeter.
Their best game of the whole weekend, or it wasn't a weekend, but the 2 days, and they played better than I'd ever seen them play before.
Hopetown doesn't look like other schools. Set in landscaped gardens, it looks more like a holiday resort. But according to Principal Elaine Quilty, the students shouldn't expect just fun and games. The aim of the school is to ensure that the mildly intellectually handicapped and children with behaviour problems can cope in the community by teaching them living skills, self-respect, independence and personal achievement. Principal Elaine Quilty.
I don't think in the economic climate that a government school can present the complete programs that we're intending to present. Also, we aim to be totally flexible, which is something that, when you're bound up by bureaucracy, is very difficult.
The school will eventually accommodate 30 residential and 30 daycare students for a period of 6 to 18 months. Stage 1, which cost $1 million, includes 4 classrooms, dormitories and a dining room. The next stage of a multi-purpose activity centre, swimming pool complex and vegetable garden is planned to be finished within the next 18 months. The project was funded by Sydney businessman John Saunders, who has agreed to go guarantor for the school until it gets on its feet financially. According to Mrs Quilty, the cost of sending a child to Hopetown is lower than most other private schools, with a 12-month residential stay costing $6,500 and day tuition for the same length of time, $3,500. The principal and board of Hopetown are considering applicants from all over the state, and the school is due to commence operations on September 8th.
Happy? Great.
A good pass there to Peter Walsh backing up.
Forwards Brock and Shire in the fight for the rest of the season, and Rip Taylor for possibly that time seemed to have blown in the betting. But after today's performance, looked more than capable of winning it anyway. They were though made look good by West, who were at times awful, and far from a chance to figure seriously in the end of season games. That can change. Their selections look off, and the coordination was non-existent. With Peter Walsh and left injured in charge, Lakes did it easy. They scored through winger Mark Bates twice, Peter Walsh twice, Nick Sullivan and Trevor Tucker, with Walsh and Darren Butler 2 goals each. Higgins, who was West's best, scored their sole try, and Mitchell Knight kicked the goal.
Good try.
These are the culprits. The longer corn, whose larvae can stay in the vines for up to 4 years, the bostrachid or auger beetle, and the elephant weevil. The problem is difficult to combat and needs to be monitored for at least 4 years.
And they bore through the canes and hollow them out, and they do tremendous damage to the internal parts of the trunk of the vine and the arms of the vine.
When should the Vineyard try and control these borers?
They could look at a winter control measures and spring summertime control measures, and firstly during the winter months train the staff to act as vineyard scouts, that is the pruners or the tractor operators. Look about for any signs of damage. The telltale signs are usually the holes, of course, in the vine, and the frass or the sawdust material that could be at the base of the vine or on the trunk or arm. And then the drastic action for control would be to lop the vine and take out the infested parts of the vine and burn them. And immediately, if you do that in winter months, you've taken out the whole population and you're back to square one. The trade-off is, of course, you're going to miss 1 year's production by having to train the vine back up onto the wires, and then you'll be back in production the second year. You've usually got a very good root system there, so it's fairly quick. And then to back up the springtime program, if you didn't want to do that drastic measure, by again observing for any signs of adult emergence, and many of them come out from October onwards. The longicorn beetle, the bostricid beetle, and the elephant weevil. And then, fortunately, the insects aren't widespread through whole vineyards, but there are pockets of them, and you'd have to deal them with, say, an insecticide and find out when they're about first.
This land to the south of the Pacific Highway at Hexham was originally designated for a purpose far removed from its nature reserve future. 23 years ago, the Commonwealth Government handed over the land to the Newcastle Council for development as an aerodrome. That project never got off the ground, and in 1984 the Council recommended to the Federal Government that it be given to the National Parks and Wildlife Service. Today the Administrator announced that the Government has okayed the transfer. But just how significant is this gift? Ryan Gilligan from the Hunter Wetlands
such a large
Trust.
parcel of land. Hexham Swamp is such a major component of the whole Hunter Estuary wetlands, and it's on the interim register of the National Estate, and it's long been recognised as having major conservation value, and so to be able to hand it over and have it become the core area of a nature reserve is really a milestone.
This transfer of land gives the Shortland Wetland Trust the continuity of protection of swampland that it's longed for. Negotiations are in their final stages for a parcel of land near the centre, and once they're completed, protected wetlands will stretch from Shortland to Hexham and across to Fullerton Cove. Mr Gilligan says that a management plan still has to be formulated, and he says the hard work has just begun.
Hexham's always going to be a reserve that will require a considerable amount of active management. It's not the sort of place that you're going to be able to put a fence around and leave it alone and it'll look after itself. We've fiddled with it and mucked it around so much over the years that I think we're always going to have to be fairly actively involved in its management, and I think that's going to be a bit of a poser for the National Parks and Wildlife Service. I think the first step for them is going to have to be a major management study to work out just what their options are and which ones they can afford.
The rainfall in the Hunter is just what the landholders had hoped for. The widespread falls varied across the region from 50 millimetres around Maitland to 35 millimetres in Singleton. Most of these areas have been drought declared for the past few months, and many graziers have been forced to hand feed stock. District agronomist with the Department of Agriculture, Neil Griffiths, says this rain will bolster pasture growth and remove the need to hand feed.
The dry conditions were really starting to affect all farmers in the Hunter Valley all right through. This rain now, well, that'll fill the dams certainly and give a chance for a good start to the spring.
You'll need some more rain though?
Oh, certainly. In a few weeks' time we'll need follow-up rain to this. We're hoping now for mild conditions so we can get some pasture growth, get some green feed for the cattle, and we'll need follow-up rain right through the spring then to keep that going.
Weeks of Wednesday afternoons went into the creation of this 110-panel banner, which required 35,000 origami flowers. The students of Waratah made the banner with the help of Matara's artist Warwick Powell and Lynn Jansen, a teacher of Japanese. Its first public appearance will be to decorate the council's float for the Matara parade. Each panel has also been photographed with a student from the school to spell out this message to Ube. The photos will be joined together to create a mural, which will then be shipped to Japan and displayed at Ubei's Civic Festival in November. 24 reams of printer's paper and box loads of red paper were used on the project. When the children started to run out of steam, they were offered make-believe Japanese yen as an incentive to make more flowers. In the end, Maria Togagay made 1,154 flowers and earned herself over 1 million yen. The children enjoyed the project and they say that even if you can't read Japanese, their message is clear.
On day one of the carnival yesterday, records that have stood for the last 20 years fell. More than 700 high school students from 37 schools in the region are competing in all track and field events. The winners in today's finals will compete in the state carnival in October. One young man who's assured of a place there is outstanding 14-year-old Chad Stevenson, who shattered many records yesterday.
Service at the cathedral kicked off a day of displays and concerts for Regional Education Day. The service was not only an occasion of worship, but a celebration of the talents of school children. These Year 2 students from East Maitland's infant school made the hymn All Things Bright and Beautiful come to life for the congregation of nearly 800. And Tricia Smith, principal of the Waratah Orthopaedic School, admitted she made 2 mistakes while leading a hand dancing performance by her students, but they seem not to have noticed. The service was led by the Dean of Newcastle, the Reverend Lawrence, who was joined by Bishop Holland and representatives from other churches in the region. After the service, the marching koalas led the congregation to Civic Park for a concert. The appreciative audience of school children was joined by workers and passers-by who took advantage of the sunshine and music. This curious 3-year-old found